They came to watch someone die, but they ended up watching something much worse. Hundreds of people, lining the streets, crowding the courtyard, pressing against each other to see. Public executions were supposed to be efficient. One moment, one sentence, one body, a clean ending. But history is full of moments when nothing went as planned. When the rope didn't do its job, when the executioner's hand shook, when the declared dead suddenly wasn't. These are not myths. They were witnessed, documented, written into the historical record by ambassadors, doctors, journalists, and terrified bystanders who couldn't believe what they were seeing. This is Savage Century, and these are 5 public executions that went horribly, catastrophically wrong. Case 5. Anne Greene, Oxford, England, 1650. A young maidservant named Anne Greene was led to the gallows. She had been convicted of concealing the death of a newborn child, a charge many believed was deeply unjust. The baby had been stillborn, but the law made no distinction. Anne was hanged. Her body left suspended for nearly 30 minutes. Friends in the crowd pulled on her legs, trying to end her suffering faster. When she was finally cut down, she was declared dead. Her body was taken to Oxford University, where it had been donated for medical dissection. 3 physicians were present: Dr. William Petty, Dr. Thomas Willis, and Dr. Ralph Bathurst. Among the most respected scientists in England at the time, they opened the coffin, and something stopped them cold. Her chest was moving. Barely, almost imperceptibly, but it was moving. The doctors acted immediately. They rubbed her limbs, poured warm liquid between her lips, pressed on her chest. And slowly, impossibly, Anne Greene opened her eyes. She had survived a 30-minute hanging and was regaining consciousness on a dissection table. Word spread across Oxford within hours. The public response was immediate. This was divine intervention, a sign from God, and the law agreed with them. Anne Greene was granted a full pardon. She went on to marry, have 3 children, and live for another 15 years. The story became so famous that the physicians published an account of it, one of the earliest documented cases of someone surviving execution in the modern historical record. Case 4. John Half-Hanged, Smith, London, England, 1705. The most famous execution site in all of England. A housebreaker named John Smith was brought to the Tyburn gallows on a cold December morning and hanged in front of a crowd. He dangled at the end of the rope for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. His friends in the crowd did what desperate people do. Some pulled on his legs, trying to shorten his suffering. Others held them up, hoping against all reason that he might somehow survive. After 15 minutes, the crowd began to shout, "Reprieve, reprieve!" And remarkably, the order was granted. Smith was cut down, carried to a nearby house, bled, as was the medical custom of the time, and slowly he came back. When he had fully recovered his senses, people asked him what it had felt like. He described it in extraordinary detail. He said that at first, he felt tremendous pain from the weight of his own body. Then came a rushing sensation, as if pressure was building inside his head. Then he saw a brilliant flash of light, as if fire had burst behind his eyes. And then, nothing. Peace. He said that waking up from death was far more painful than dying had been. In his exact words, he could have wished those hanged who had cut him down. The crowd that had demanded his reprieve had saved his life. And John Smith, now carrying the nickname Half-Hanged Smith for the rest of his days, returned to his old ways. He was indicted for housebreaking twice more and escaped the gallows both times, once on a legal technicality, and once when his prosecutor died before the trial could begin. Some men, it seems, are simply impossible to execute. Case 3. William Duell, London, England, 1740. William Duell, 18 years old, was hanged for murder. The execution was carried out in public, in front of the usual crowd. He was declared dead. His body was transported to the Company of Surgeons in London. The same fate as Anne Greene, the same destination, a dissection table. The body was stripped and laid out. A surgeon's assistant began washing it in preparation for the procedure. And then the assistant noticed something. The body was breathing, faintly, with difficulty, but breathing. They sat the body upright. 2 hours later, William Duell was conscious and able to speak. The room, full of trained medical professionals, was in complete shock. A man who had been publicly executed, officially declared dead, transported to a medical facility, stripped and prepared for dissection, was alive. He was in pain, weak, barely coherent, but alive. The authorities were notified, and they faced a problem that the law had not anticipated. What do you do with someone who has already been executed? Their solution: commute the sentence. William Duell was transported to Australia rather than hanged a second time. He was never executed again, and the question he left behind, how many others like him never woke up before the surgeons began their work, has never been fully answered. Case 2. Thomas Scott. Fort Garry, Canada, 1870. Thomas Scott, a young Protestant laborer caught up in the Red River resistance, was sentenced to death by the Provisional Métis government led by Louis Riel. He was to be executed by firing squad. 6 soldiers were selected. 100 witnesses gathered in the cold March air outside the fort's eastern gate. Scott was brought out, blindfolded, made to kneel in the snow. The order was given. What happened next shocked everyone present. Of the 6 soldiers in the firing squad, one, a man named Augustin Parisian, refused to fire. He removed the cap from his rifle before the command was even given. Of the 5 shots that were fired, only 2 hit Scott. One struck his left shoulder, one hit his upper chest. Neither killed him, according to witnesses, including Reverend George Young, who was present at the execution. A man then stepped forward and fired a pistol at close range directly at Scott's head. The bullet entered his left cheek and exited near his nose. Scott was placed in a coffin, and according to multiple accounts, including that of Métis leader John Bruce, he was still alive inside it, still breathing, still crying out. Whether he died in the coffin or was given a final shot to end his suffering remains disputed in the historical record. What is not disputed is that the execution was so badly mishandled, carried out by soldiers some witnesses described as intoxicated, that it created a political scandal that would define Canadian history for decades. Thomas Scott became a martyr, and Louis Riel, 15 years later, would himself be hanged for his role in events that began on that frozen morning in Manitoba. Case 1. Margaret Pole, Tower of London, 1541. At 7 o'clock in the morning, a 67-year-old woman was woken in her cell and told she would be dead within the hour. Her name was Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury. She was the last surviving Plantagenet, direct descendant of the royal house that had ruled England for over a century before the Tudors took the throne. She had been imprisoned for 2 years, never formally tried, never given a chance to defend herself. Her crime, in the eyes of Henry VIII, was simply existing. Her son, Cardinal Reginald Pole, had spoken out against the king, and for that, his mother would pay. Margaret was taken from her cell and led to a low wooden block set up on the grounds of the tower, not a proper scaffold, just a block of wood placed hurriedly on the grass. The chief executioner had been sent elsewhere. In his place stood a young man, described in diplomatic dispatches as a wretched and blundering youth. He was inexperienced, untrained, and about to execute one of the most high-born women in all of England. Margaret Pole looked at the block and refused. "So should traitors do," she said. and I am none." She turned her head from side to side, looking at the witnesses gathered around her, approximately 150 people, according to the account of Eustace Chapais, the imperial ambassador to the Holy Roman Emperor, who documented the event in a dispatch sent 2 weeks later. If he wanted her head, she told the executioner, he would have to take it as best he could. Guards stepped forward and forced her to her knees. The young executioner raised the axe and missed. The blade struck her shoulder, gashing through flesh and bone. Margaret screamed. What followed was documented in the Calendar of State Papers, the official diplomatic record of Tudor England, as one of the most horrific scenes ever witnessed at the Tower. It took 11 blows. 11. Some accounts say she struggled between strokes. Some say she tried to rise. Some say the executioner chased her, the axe falling again and again, hacking at her neck and shoulders while the witnesses stood in stunned silence. The French ambassador, Charles de Marillac, sent a report to Paris 2 days later. The imperial ambassador Chapais confirmed it. Both men had been at courts across Europe. Both had witnessed the executions of queens, ministers, and traitors. And both men described what happened to Margaret Pole as something they would not easily forget. Pope Leo XIII beatified her in 1886, nearly 3.5 centuries after her death, as a Catholic martyr. The poem carved on the wall of her cell in the Tower was discovered when the chapel was renovated in 1876. It read, "For traitors on the block should die. I am no traitor, no, not I." She was the daughter of a duke, the last of a royal line, the godmother of a princess. And she died on a patch of grass in front of 150 witnesses at the hands of a boy who didn't know how to use an axe. Henry VIII never publicly commented on her death. Public executions were designed to project power, order, control, the absolute authority of the state over life and death. But these 5 cases revealed something else, that the machinery of death is operated by human hands, trembling hands, drunk hands, inexperienced hands, sometimes hands that refuse to act at all. And in those moments of failure, in the 30 minutes Anne Greene hung from a rope, in the coffin where Thomas Scott was still breathing, in the 11 blows that couldn't silence Margaret Pole, we see something that official history rarely admits. It was never as clean as they wanted you to believe. Tell me in the comments, which of these cases disturbed you the most, and where are you watching from? If stories like this are what you're looking for, history that doesn't sanitize the past, subscribe to the channel, because here on Savage Century, we don't make history comfortable, we make it honest.